Used to have people in Jamaica like Caribbean Distributing Company. They used to make a good living by, even now, buying records and send them to England. England is the gateway to really reggae music.
The name of the music in England was Bluebeat. It was called Bluebeat. And so I was trying to sort of market the music, and everybody would say, oh, do you have some blue beats, you know? And so I really pushed the name ska, because in Jamaica, it wasn't called blue beat. In Jamaica, it was called ska, because it's a sort of onomatopoeic word for the guitar on the offbeat. So I really pushed the name ska.
The earliest ska performers arrived in Britain in the early 60s. Singers like Prince Buster followed their records into this country and were mobbed by West Indians alongside adoring mods and skinheads. The first big Jamaican success in the British pop charts came in 1965. It was a Chris Blackwell production, Millie Small's My Boy Lollipop.
This record of Millie, which I knew was going to be a hit when I finished working on it. It never got to #1, unfortunately, it got to #2. But it became a huge hit and it changed my life completely.
By the early 70s, a small number of producers were firmly in control of the Jamaican and therefore the emerging British reggae business. Though tens of thousands of records were distributed around the UK, many artists were not receiving much reward.
Accountability was always a problem because it was about them. Oh, I'm selling you a record in England and, you know, you just have to take my word for it. This is how it goes. It was difficult to sue these people because you didn't know who to sue. We were told that it went to Jamaica to the producer. When we went to Jamaica to get our portion, we were told that it was left here for children to give it to us. I never really trusted these outlets.
You're supposed to get a percentage on every record that is sold. That is royalty, mechanical royalties. You could get publishing, money from publishing, copyright, and these things. And I never used to get that at all. Just the £10 and that's it.
You discover that you haven't got anything to show for what you have done. I became very depressed. And I locked myself away for quite a while.
Times were hard for Jamaican artists who had settled here, but found there was little support for their careers or follow-up to their early successes. Their records were one-hit wonders. It was the tunes that mattered, not the artists. One reggae singer even recorded a musical plea to the BBC to play his people's music.
A lot of the DJs had a snobbery towards Jamaican music and that sometimes bordered on racialism.
There was nothing played on the radio. There wasn't a few. There was nothing played on the radio. I never sent any of the records to the radio after a bit because nobody was ever interested in them. I never sent them to the press because nobody was interested in them.
You know, according to the rock press and the whole student rock scene, reggae was like idiot music. It was regarded as some sort of weird novelty music. It wasn't taken seriously at all.
Determined to get radio play, producers began remixing Jamaican recordings to make them sound sweeter. First off, they reduced the bass frequencies, and then they added an orchestral sound.
It seems like companies like Trojan, to make the records accessible to the British buying public, seem to add strings to make it more classical. And then there was things like Young, Gifted and Black that went into the charts. Bob Andy Marcia Griffiths, Bob and Marcia, that had strings all over it. First time when he does that,
I was very satisfied and very pleased with the strings. And so to hear a Jamaican recording, probably the first, to be so well endowed with such beautiful arrangements, I felt good to be a part of that.
It was the music that we identified with. And my time in school, there wasn't many black kids in the class. There was about 3 or 4 of us at the time.
Miss Atkins.
We took our music to school. It was our music. It was something that we said this was ours.
In the early 70s, British school curricula virtually ignored West Indian culture and history.
Bearing in mind, we were never taught about ourselves at the schools. It was always about William the Conqueror, Battle of Hastings, Elizabeth I, the Spanish Armada. Things that really had nothing to do with our development, our growth spiritually, physically, mentally. At that time, it was very important to me. As a matter of fact, I've never looked back since in the direction I've decided to take.
As a first-generation British-born black, we'd seen how our parents were really getting shafted by trying to anglicize themselves to be accepted. And we weren't buying that.
What we did reject was the caution that our parents and the restraint that our parents had. In an hostile racial environment, they were limited in the ways that they could fight against racial oppression. They had responsibilities. They had to put kids through school, they had to put bread on the table, send money back home to their families, and so on.
Though West Indians had been migrating here since the late 1940s to do the jobs the British didn't want to do, many were still haunted well into the 70s by Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech condemning immigration. Though violence sometimes broke out, irony was perhaps a sharper weapon.
Hello there. Hey, you're lucky I came tonight, because I won't be here tomorrow. Enoch Powell has offered me £1,000 to go home, which is great, really, because it's only £10 on the train from here to Birmingham.
We wanted to be British, we wanted to be fit in and become a part of the society, but we found ourselves in a racialized environment, and this is where reggae came in. Reggae afforded us our own independent cultural identity. We were rejected by the wider society, so this was our music, this was our culture. For my generation, we were the rebel generation, and we refused to tolerate the things our parents tolerated. Listening to the imports coming in from Jamaica, you could keep in touch with what was happening in the society. You could keep in touch with the language.
We knew what we were supposed to sound like, because we were getting the music from Jamaica. But there was no visual accompaniment. I mean, Bob would come along soon with the dreadlocks and everything, but, for imagery of Jamaica, we'd invariably come from a postcard, and there'd be a man riding a donkey on a beach with a straw hat or somebody limbo dancing. But then I saw Harder They Come. That would have been in the early 70s. And I walked out inspired and empowered. I mean, we were all empowered after seeing Harder They Come. I mean, it was a story of somebody who'd come from the country, come into the city to make it. And again, that really appealed to us as, we weren't exactly foreigners. We were born here, but we were made to feel like that. So Jimmy Cliff's struggle, it struck a chord with us.
While cinemas introduced